Hello again, and it's time for another project. Today we're going to do a little router work on these two ladies here carrying their baskets wares to the market. Now we're going to route it out on recycled pine, and once it's all nicely routed out, we're literally going to inlay each one of these sections with some nice coloured resin. So basically we're going to route out everything that's white, leaving just the black lines. So a nice steady little project. Now it is on recycled wood, so take your time to go round. I've had holes at the back of here to deal with. They go in about an inch or so, so that's the reason we can't bring the paper straight to the bottom. We've got a lip on this end here, and we've got a curve on that back there. So apart from the top piece, we will have to cut out the framework afterwards. And that is the idea on this project. No framework, we're actually going to route out a frame. You'll see when I lift this up gently. So we've got our template stuck down. It's going to measure in at 16 inches by 12 from corner to corner. And we're going to route it out at a 3mm depth, which literally is the same thickness as one of the CNC bits. I'm going to show those now. But before that, my way of transferring is literally just stick your template down. Take your time, look at your wood. If you've got knots and stuff, you might be able to twist and turn it. Make sure the best piece you can find. And I'll literally just pop in some carbon paper underneath. Nice fresh carbon paper. This piece has been used on all my projects. That wouldn't even work anymore, I wouldn't have thought. But nice bit of fresh carbon paper. Stick it down with painter's tape and literally go around it all. I like to use a pen. You can use a pencil and you draw around it. It takes a matter of 5 minutes. That way, if you want to make another one of these projects, you can use that over and over again. Some people prefer to stick the paper straight to the wood and route over the top. I've tried it once, never again. There's different methods where you can put it in reverse, pop that on there with some acetone, I believe, and then rub the back and that transfers it. Too much hard work for me. Simple carbon and trace. You are certainly not going to go wrong with that. And there we have it. There's our lovely image all ready to route out. As you can see from there, now take your time. Take a couple of seconds to shade in the areas that you want to remove. Remember, all this background is going to come out, so that'll be the longest bit. But shading all the bits you want to remove, leaving the sections that you want to leave. And on this case, the two sticks or shafts that they're carrying, we're obviously going to leave them, but we will route out everything else. And then, like I say, nice bit of multicoloured resin. Resin all the background, and we're resin a nice sun in the sky there as well. And you can just see there, I did start off with a thinner frame. I wasn't too happy with that, and I've worked out with that hole in there, that come up to about there, so that was about the thickness of my frame. So I've extended that slightly, so once it's finished, we'll have a nice little frame all the way around, which obviously will will act sorry, I'm being rushed on today, act as a barrier and stop the resin from running over the edges. As always for me, CNC bits, I think it's a 15 we've got today. They come in 15s, 20s, you get 30s and all, and that's just the angle of the cut on the end. It's quite pointed. This one might just get it in focus here. There we go. So that's a 15 degree on that one, and that literally is the cut there at the end. That's plenty, because we are filling it all in with resin. Now they have a 3.175mm shaft on, so you need an adapter collet, 6.35mm, and that literally slots in there. That's now 1/4 inch or 6.35mm, and that will fit your router no problem. So we'll use this, we'll set it to a depth of 3mm. I've made some little gauges like this. You can purchase proper depth gauges if you wish, but a piece of wood does. And you just sit your router on there, and you can set your bit to any depth you like. Mine, like I say, is about 3mm, which is the same thickness as that. And if we pop that on there, that's just nice and level. And that is plenty for resin. You don't need to go any deeper. The deeper you go, just more strain on your machine and the bits. And obviously, I don't know, I can't talk today, I do apologise. It's going to cost you more in resin to fill up, so 3mm is plenty. So we'll pop that into our adapter collet, into the silver end, and we'll route out all these lines. So we'll go around all these, round everything, and inside as well, just leaving that clear section there, clear section there. And once you get into your stride, you get into the zone, surprising how quick you'll go around this. And then obviously we'll do the full lines here of the framework. Once we've done that, we can remove our little CNC bit. You'll get a lot more projects out of that. And I like to move on to these end milling bits. These are ideal for these smaller projects. We can get one at a nice size, because nothing too technical on today. As long as it fits in that little line there, I've just noticed. And that slots into the same adapter. We set it to the 3mm, the same depth. And then we'll come in and literally just start removing all those shaded areas. And that is just enough to fit in that little small area there. And obviously fit in that little area there. So once we've removed all that and all the background, we'll be heading towards the resin. Now there is bigger pieces out there, bigger bits, and these are only the bits that I use. There's profile bits, spiral up cuts, liner bits, whatever your pocket can take, they're probably the bits you want. But for me, eBay or Amazon are fine. These are quite chunky bits, straight flush bits. You don't need an adapter with those because they come with a 1/4 inch shaft. They will take that back out, no problem. They'll just rip it out really good. However, when you come into the delicate areas, if you get too near that, I could pop that off at the same time. So bear that in mind. So we just go steady with the end milling bits. If it is slow, we can always pop on a smaller one. And that will just help us just to remove all that background. Okay, we'll pop our little CNC back into the adapter collet. We'll save the end milling bits for later. We'll set it to 3mm, remember, on our little gauge, and we'll start routing this one out. Once it's all routed out and we've done our framework, I will literally come in with a scroll saw or a bandsaw and take off the waste that goes all the way around. We've obviously done the top section already. Now the reason we leave that on till last is when you come in with your router, as you're coming towards the end pieces there, we don't want your router rocking back and forwards. So the more wood you can leave on, the better that is for routing that out down that straight line there. And then we'll cut it off at the last minute. Okay, enough talking, as we say. Let's start routing this one out. Right, we've got our router bit in the router, as you can see there. And that literally is a depth of about 3mm. You can see as we slide that across here, it just about fits in that gap. And that's good to keep. Should you go away and do another little project, when you come back, you can obviously set it to the same gap again. So we're going to route out all the sections like we said previously. On these smaller ones, as in regards to the arms, and even down into the feet maybe, and the legs. We might just do that with the CNC bit. So all the inner cuts, all the outer cuts, and then we'll quickly do the framework. And then we'll pop on the end miller bits, start clearing it out. And if it's a little bit slow, we'll jump onto the straight flush bits. Right, let's start routing this one out. Okay, we've done all the inner lines. That's come out no problem. You can more or less see from that. The only thing I do find with this recycled pine, it can be quite dusty, but that's just something you've got to put up with for free wood. Now obviously we want to do exactly the same now to the outer lines. So we'll go around everything on the outside, not forgetting to do inside there. And and obviously the same on that one. And then we'll do the frame itself. Now, for those that's new to routing, straight lines take a little doing, a little getting used to. Nothing too complicated, but if you're not too sure with your lines, get yourself a little guide like so. My router, the Black & Decker, does actually come with a guide itself, but I've never used it. I think I tried it once and I'll just do mine freehand. But if you get yourself a little piece of wood, it doesn't have to be as thick as this. And basically, if I can just show you, we're setting that up literally about there. You get your router bit and put it into the corner where you want to be. If you set that up like so, get your piece of wood on there, and then literally just clamp it down. You'll have to do it off the table to give yourself the room. So clamp it down like so. This is just quickly just to show you guys. And then pop your CNC bit into the other corner, so you know where you want it. And then move your wood up so it's in line like so. And then obviously you're going to put a clamp at that end. And that will give you a nice straight edge to run your router on. So when you come to route out, you can put it back on that corner piece and basically just run along with your piece of wood like that. So nice and steady. And that should be near enough to give you a straight line. And then obviously you would take it off and do exactly the same for your side bits. Pop your little router there, put your wood up to where you want it to be, same on that side, pop your two clamps on, and that'll just give you a straighter edge. Personally myself, I'll just do it freehand because I'm not overly concerned about how straight it needs to be. So we'll go around the edges of these two characters, should we call them, and then I'll just do the framework, and then when we come back we can start clearing this one out. Okay, we've gone all the way around all the lines now. We've done our little framework, and that's definitely near enough what I want. You see there, we've routed all the way up there and all the way around. So we've got a frame going. Remember, this section here will be cut off. It's just that darker section there, which will be the frame. Basically, the same thickness as what we've got at the top there. And we've gone around everything. Everything seems to be fine. We've not missed anything. If some things aren't overly fantastic, when we go in with the end milling bits, we can just nibble away at these and just make it a bit more somewhere near for what we want. So that's it for the CNC bit. So that's just a simple case of removing that. You'll get a lot more projects out of those little bits. And we're going to pop in one of these end milling bits for now, just to get us going on the actual two characters. And then we'll start removing the backer. And if it is a slow process, we'll pop on one of those straight flush bits I mentioned earlier. We'll show you those should we need them. But for now, just simple case of popping that in there like so. I got these with these little barriers on, so you'll actually just push it in up to that barrier. I've struggled to find them with the barrier on now, so they basically come without that barrier, but they are exactly the same bit. So we pop that in, we'll set that to 3mm. I've removed some of this section, so we'll put it in the router, pop it in there, so it's the same depth of that, any of these that we've done. And basically, we're just going to start removing everything else we can see, and hopefully leaving these two people behind. Okay, let's route this out. Right, you can see from that we've cleared out the insides of all our little characters there. So now it's going to be a simple case of removing all this background, and hopefully we'll be left with a nice little lip all the way around everything. So when we put our resin in, it'll just make a nice little barrier and nothing's going to run away on us. So I'm going to keep the milling bit on. It's coming out really easy, so it might take a little bit while longer, but I'm just going nice and slowly, and we'll just nibble away and remove all the background next. Right, you can see from that we've made it all the way around with those end milling bits. They route out really nice. They are good because they will do the side of the piece as well as route out the bottom section. So it's hard to see from there, but that's really quite smooth, is that. Bit of sanding down. We don't need a lot on this back section, remember. We're going to cover it all with resin. But if you were painting this, it wouldn't take you a couple of minutes just to get a bit of sandpaper and smooth that all down. And there it is so far. We can see our general project. Now the next stage for me normally will be to use some engraving bits, just eBay specials, pack of 30 for next to nothing. And I get one with a nice flat bottom and attach it to a flexi cable like so. And then we just use that flat end and just go inside and just give it a nice tidy up. It doesn't need a lot, it's all routed out fairly nice, but just gets these little corner sections here. So we'll give it a nice tidy up with that, and then we'll come back, good old bit of sandpaper, just get rid of those pencil lines. We might even skim over with a little mouse sander yet. But before that, I'm just going to cut it out. Nothing to see there really. I will use a scroll saw, just cut this out with. I do have a bandsaw in the corner, but I just don't trust myself on the bandsaw yet. But you could use a bandsaw, even an handsaw. Just take the remainder of this framework. Remember, we're going to cut all this off here and all that along there and that section along there. So basically, we'll end up with a little framework like so. So I'll cut this out quickly, give it a nice tidy up with our end engraving bits, bit of sanding down, and then we'll be on to the next stage. We'll do that now. Okay, so we cut it out with the scroll saw. We use the Dremel on a flexi cable with a nice little engraving bit on, like so. Literally just to give it a little more tidy out and get us into these nice little tight corners. And then we use a good old bit of sandpaper just to round those edges off, just so they're not so sharp to the touch. So they're all nice and smooth. We've got our nice frame there going, as you can see. And that's basically, that's it as regards to the woodworking side of things are done. Now it's just going to be a simple case of putting some stain on here. You could leave it like that and just put some boiled linseed oil on, Danish oil. I actually just want to use a dark teak stain on the framework and a lighter teak on these little sections here. Now remember, we're going to fill this all in with resin. So once this is all done, we will spray a bit of varnish on beforehand. I'll talk after about that once the stain's dry. But you could put paint in here if you wanted to. You could paint all these different sections. If resin is not your thing, then sand it all down nice. It'll be nice, sharp and crispy. And then you put your oil on afterwards, and then a bit of varnish just to finish it off. But I'm going to use stain on this one. We'll chance it. Normally, those who watch my videos know I prefer my boiled linseed. So it will be a light teak for those sections. And this one here that I've literally just sprayed all around my shed by shaking it, that is a dark teak. Can you just about see that? And we use that for the framework itself. And it's just a simple, a simple case of putting it on. We'll let it soak in nicely. Let it run down the side. Now, on this one, I will do all the backer as well. Seems a bit strange, seems we are filling it all in with resin. But on a previous project, I did the bumblebee, if you remember that on one of my previous videos. Once the resin had gone in and cured, if you left it with that, let's say you left it like that, you could actually see that stain through the resin. So that the resin itself could look a little bit blotchy. So to play safe, in a couple of seconds, we're just going to cover the whole piece like that. But the main pieces are obviously the wooden section there. And make sure it soaks down the sides. So I'll do all this, fill the full piece, takes a matter of seconds, and it dries fairly quickly. You don't have to wait on. I'll do all this section around here, and then we'll do the framework. And then when it gets dry, should I say, I'm too busy listening to the birds outside. I'm actually in my shed, obviously. And there's different sounds outside, and I'm trying to listen to see what we've got kicking about today. So I'll complete all this, and when we come back, we'll pop a bit of varnish on. Right, that's all nicely dry now. No problem with that. And you can just see the difference between the framework and those pieces there. Remember, we're not going to see any of that backer. We're going to totally fill that with resin. I've got it rested on a couple of little cut-offs there. Just keep the dust away from it. Now, the next stage for me is just going to spray some varnish on. A couple of reasons why we do this. This is an indoor piece, by the way. Anything with resin on, I certainly wouldn't put outdoors. It's to just give it a nice shine. Also, it'll hopefully seal this wood in those routed out areas, and that will just stop with any bleeding. You would also do this if you're going to put paint inside, so the paint doesn't bleed into the side walls and make a right mess. So we'll spray it all nicely, and hopefully it will seal it all, give it a nice shine, and hopefully it will just reduce some of the bubbling on the resin. I've had no issues personally myself, but it's just a little routine, a little thing I've got into doing. And I have no preference. It'll be 151 varnish today. I also use Paint Factory or gloss varnish. They're all the same to me. Just cheap vanishes. They won't be the best in the world, but for indoor projects, they certainly won't be an issue. So we'll just give this a nice spray off. Then I'll go outside and finish it off. And then when we come back, we'll be ready to put the resin in. Now, obviously, we're going to spray this all now, so this wood will be finished. Once the resin goes in, we'll just fill each section. Not quite to the line of this. We want to still be able to feel the routed out sections. Some projects, you can overfill with resin and sand it all flush, and then put a nice flood coat of resin on afterwards. But on this one, the actual resin, as it finishes, this will be the end of the project. So we spray it all first now, and that way we've sealed, we've protected, and we've given it a nice shine. So a little coat like that, you can see that just darkening down nicely. And I'll do this 3 or 4 times, just give it a nice going over, and we'll get right inside there. Just spray the full piece. Get those little side walls, and we'll get the sides of the framework outside when there's not so much dust. Right, next time we come back, it'll be resin time. Right, that's all nicely dry now, and you might just be able to see that little shine we've got on the framework and on the centre of the piece. And hopefully that will be enough just to seal it all. I'm going to have to fill this in sideways on, just so we can get it in this screen. Yeah, we'll do it sideways on, but obviously we'll see it when it's all nicely finished, hopefully. Now the resin today, Vista one, 2-part resin like all epoxy resins. You'll have A, your resin, and B, your hardener. Just read your instructions. You'll see this one, it's a 1-to-1 mix, which basically means however much A, the resin you use exactly the same amount of B, the hardener. Put them into 2 little containers and then mix them both together. Follow your instructions. Please put your gloves on. Don't follow my example. Put your gloves on. Get a nice proper organic filtered mask, and you want plenty of ventilation just to be on the safe side. Some people can have irritations regards to resin being toxic, and obviously it's a chemical that you're playing with. So please just do your research on that first. But for me, I like to use these little plastic containers, little party containers here. You'll get a pack of 100 for next to nothing, and they work fine for me. And for mixing purposes, just cheap plastic knife and fork spoons. These are ideal because they do have a little lip on the end, and then for the small areas we'll be able to scoop that out there and hopefully just feed that in there nicely. You can use syringes or those plastic pipettes, whatever they're called, to fill in. I'll just find the back of the spoon, works fine for me. So there's A, your resin. These little plastic containers have little grooves on, so I've gone up literally 6 for A, and obviously because it's a 1-to-1 mix, gone up 6 for B, the hardener. Some resins are 2-to-1 to mix, so you'll put twice as much A, 3-to-1, 4-to-1. So look out. And you also get deep pour resins for 2 inches plus. We obviously don't need it for these. So we're all good. What I'll do, I'll mix these off camera, and it is just a simple case of popping them 2 in. They do say put it into a 3rd cup. I've never bothered. I'll just pour that into there and mix it all in the one. And I certainly have no issues with that. Colorise, I'm going to use acrylic paints. Just Crawford and blacks today, and we're just going to put plenty of colour in this and then fill it all in nicely, and hopefully we have a nice little project at the end. There is pigments out there, paste, inks, powders, little things like that if you want to use prefer that to colour with. And that's it. So that we'll mix these 2 off camera, and then when we come back we can start adding the colour and basically start filling this one in. Right, we've mixed the resin up, no problem. If you're not too happy about the bubbles in it, you can stand it in some warm water for a couple of minutes. I'm not too bothered because the paint's going to mix in, and then we'll use a lighter to skim over the top to get release of the bubbles out of the way. So I'm quite happy with that. I actually mixed a little bit more, and I've transferred some into another container because we're going to use a different colour. These are all quite small areas, so you probably split it again 3 times. Just use a little colour that you need for the 2 sections, then we add a different colour to another fresh piece of resin, and so on. It's a lot better than mixing a full container or half a cup full and making it all blue when you only need them 2 bits. I do have side projects going. I tend to have one of these little something like that, and anything I've got left over I just pop into there. Or I also have, I'm just looking now as we find them, I make these little koi carp fish with anything that's left over, and that's just a simple mould. And I have a couple of these little moulds left to one side, any leftover resin I simply just pull them in there, pour it in there, and we just get all different kinds of things, so nothing goes to waste. And it's a lot more obviously I'll just fill that one up. And they'll be in future projects, in one of my videos a bit further down the line. But for now, lots of plenty mixed in there now. So we're just going to add our acrylic paints, remember. Some nice bright colours on this one. I'm going to start off with a green. And it's just a by eye really. I tend to put so much in, and then I give it a little mix round. And if it looks okay, we're good to go. Don't go too crazy with your mixers. Don't put too much in. It might just alter the consistency and the curing time of your resin. That looks okay so far. We can put a bit on there. If it looks a bit too light, we can always add a bit more paint in. But you don't want to go over the top with it, like I've just said. These colours will look better once you go outside. That looks quite a dark green, does that one? I'm going to add a little bit more in there. Just not quite nice what I want. Donk. There we go. That'll be enough, hopefully. Give it another mix round. You have a good half an hour to play with this resin, so don't panic. That one we've got sat there. There's no harm coming to that. If you do feel it's starting to go a little bit stiff, just pop it in a cup with a bit of warm water in. Just put that inside and it will soften the resin back up again. So we'll start filling this all in like so. Like I said previously, with these little spoons, they're ideal because they do have little scoops on the back like that. So if you want to fill that in, you could do it with that, or obviously you can pour it straight out of the container. Once you start filling it in, I like to get myself a little cocktail stick, and when you get into these corners, we can just help it along its way, like so. Let's see what this colour's like. I think I might want a little bit more in here yet. It's just not quite. I do like my nice solid colours. That's maybe not a million miles away, is it? So I want some in there, and I know for a fact I want some in there. And even on this one, I know I'm still going to have some resin left over. So I will start filling up my little koi carp fish, or the container that I just mentioned here. Right, I'll just fill this in, the old process. As we go along, once that's nicely levelled, get yourself a lighter at the end there. And if you skim over the top, you see there, all those bubbles. That's it, the bubbles have all gone now. Just quickly as that. And if you're not happy with those flamethrower ones, I call it, you can get small ones like this. And then you just go over the top, and you will see all those bubbles just disappearing, leaving a nice shiny resin like so. There you go. Okay, right, we'll quickly, I say quickly, we'll fill this one in, and then when we come back, we'll put it to one side, and we'll see what it's like in 24 to 48 hours. Okay, let's continue and fill this one in. Right, just to say, had enough resin. That was my last little bit there. Maybe could have gone a little bit more in there, but for this little project, I won't even bother mixing it up. It's been a quite warm day today, so I've had to be a bit quick, and some of it was thickening up before I had a chance to get it laid. If I can just show you, basically this is what we had left over from the different colours, so not a lot of wastage, and I'll pop those out tomorrow and they're going to go in a future project. But for now, this is basically more or less finished. We'll put it to one side. I have been skimming over with the lighter, like so. And you can see that would pop all those lovely bubbles here. And hopefully that's all nice and clear. So I'm not prepared to mix any more now. We'll make that do. You can see that lovely shine on there. So we'll put this to one side for a good 24, if not 48 hours. Get a nice cover for it. I'll put a tray on and just cover it over, because any flies, dust, it will be attracted like a magnet. So we'll come back in 24 hours and hopefully this little project will be finished. Right, that's it. This little project is finished. Now it's roughly 24 hours later, if not less. I would leave this for another 2 or 3 days just to make sure. Some resin groups, they reckon it's 30 days to cure solid. I have my own beliefs about that, but for me, 24 hours later, everything's solid, nothing's sticking. That for me basically is finished. Got a nice shine to it there, as you can see. So that's it. This little project is done. So if you remember, we use our CNC bits. And I do all the lines with the CNC bits with that little adapter collet. And then we pop in the end milling bits for all the clear out. All those coloured sections, they're all removed with the end milling bits. Once you get in the zone, you soon clear it off. And this pine came out really nice. Then we had a light teak dye to do the figures with. And then we use a dark teak dye to do the framework. And if you remember, right at the end there, some nice gloss. Any gloss will do for me. Just to spray it over. One, it just gives a nice shine to the wood. This is an indoor piece, remember. And then two, it hopefully seals that wood, helps with the bubbles, and also stops the resin bleeding into any of these side walls of the rooted out section. Don't know if you can see any from there, but we've had no issues regard to bleeding. And that's it. This little project is finished. And if you remember, Vista 1 resin today mixed with cheap acrylic paint. And that's worked out fine. So that's it. This little project is finished. Thank you very much for watching.